Okay, go right ahead. Do it.
So on Monday, I believe, it was announced that Amazon was going to invest up to $4 billion in Anthropic. Took me a while to kind of figure out what all Anthropic does, but from what I can understand, very similar to ChatGPT in that they have this AI assistant named Claude.
Claude, like Claude
The,
Shannon.
the company was actually started by two former OpenAI executives. They have a consumer facing application, which is, just similar to the chat GPT most of us think about. And then they also have this AI assistant that they kind of sell to businesses to integrate in their workflows or add on top of whatever. So like they have an integration with Slack where you can add Anthropic AI to your Slack page and you can say like, there's this long thread, summarize it for me, that kind of thing. So they're investing $1.25 billion up front and then a potential additional 2.75 billion if certain conditions are met. $4 billion in total. This is by far the biggest investment acquisition, not really an acquisition, but investment they've ever made for AWS specifically. I mean, they've made big acquisitions and investments for the business overall, Whole Foods, MGM, probably missing some others. There was a lot of, I guess, I don't know, synergies you could call it. To be honest, some of the AWS nitty gritty is over my head. So they were talking about some of the integrations with Amazon Bedrock or AWS Bedrock, which is, from what I understand, kind of this generative AI for developers that helps them with their AWS customer experience. They're also going to use the Inferentia chips, which are like the AI specific chips that Amazon rolled out, which are apparently 30% lower cost. And they're going to use AWS Trainium to train all their AI models. I'm saying stuff that probably doesn't matter to most people. My question to you, what do you think about them lobbing out potentially $4 billion on something? To be honest, we don't understand the synergies here. And it's the biggest sum they've ever done for AWS specifically.
Yeah. Well, I think,
And it's a minority stake, so they don't really have like control over the way the business is going to operate.
yeah, my thinking is it's maybe not clearly, but I'm worried that it's a bubble. And we'll get to some other stuff here that might be a little more bubbly, specifically with OpenAI. But I like with the cloud providers that there's a margin of safety here because a lot of this money is basically saying, we're going to give you this investment, right? But it's essentially just a partnership to say, okay, you're committed to spending on our cloud platform or whatever you want to describe it, our cloud infrastructure. So a lot of the money is going to flow back to AWS. And I don't think it's a bad move.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I think you almost have to just say Andy Jassy, who ran AWS for the longest time, you kind of have to trust him with this stuff because he's proven it in the past. My only concern is, does it feel like you have to start acquiring or investing in other companies to add certain capabilities? That would kind of concern me.
Yeah.
Other thing that's kind of tangential to this, OpenAI, parent company of ChatGPT, is apparently in talks to raise a secondary round, valuing the company at 80 to 90 billion dollars. That's about
It's about 90 times sales. They're about, I think, at $1 billion in revenue annually right now.
90 times sales, and it's a 2x, 3x, might be triple the valuation that Microsoft invested in them at 8 months ago. So Microsoft's going to beat earnings if this is true,
Yeah.
because they're going to have to mark up their stake
Here's
by
what I was
like
thinking. Yeah.
15 billion.
Yeah, so they do this new round, right? And we'll get to the employee part, which I think is quite telling. But they're gonna get this new stake. Microsoft's gonna have a big unrealized gain. Then that's gonna make sure they beat their earnings per share, which means that Microsoft stock's gonna rise, which is gonna create their momentum, which is gonna get the indexes to buy more, which is gonna just create this self-fulfilling cycle. And yeah, so the indexes are gonna rise, right? To the end of the year, just because of this.
Could be. Very well
Yeah.
could be.
If Apple, I mean, honestly, if Apple and Microsoft beat earnings, for at least a couple of weeks, it drives that momentum. But that's a whole other topic that actually might not know much about. But there's another important part here that
Okay.
you want to hit, right?
I think a lot of it is, I think I'm remembering this correctly, but I think a lot of it is employees selling stock, not the company issuing, which is maybe telling just in that they're using it as a liquidation event and other people are using it as a buying opportunity. But
Yeah, and a 3-year-old company. I mean,
the thing, okay, so I used to just hate on OpenAI, not understand the value proposition. Then this week, Spotify announced this AI for podcast translation where they're going to do kind of this real time. Well, they will, if you upload a podcast, it's a pilot program right now. They're going to be able to translate your voice into a bunch of other languages using OpenAI's technology. Some of those business applications of OpenAI's tech gives me some sense that this could be really valuable. Now, is it 90 times sales valuable? Kind of hard to say, but I'm starting to get a better understanding of how it can be really useful in the real world.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, it's clearly got a lot of value. What I wonder though is, how hard is it going to be for Google to just replicate this? How hard is it going to be for Amazon AWS services to replicate this? With, again, you talked about them be kind of the third party person to help other people do this. And then also Meta this week, which we're probably not even talking about, launched a bunch of stuff like this. They could probably easily do it. I'm forgetting others. Apple, I guess, seems to drop the ball on this type of stuff. But either way, I wonder how, like, given how expensive it is to do this stuff versus how big the competition is, whether this is going to be an add-on feature similar to the voice assistants that actually don't create much shareholder value, but it's something a lot of these companies have to do. But as a, I think it's a lot of that, like Spotify's providing a lot of value specifically maybe to us. You could be listening to this in Spanish a year from now. Could be quite interesting. And, there's over 1 billion Spanish speakers in the world. That's a huge value add for a ton of podcasts like ourselves.
Plus, we can hear ourselves speak fluently. That would be nice. There's obviously lots of applications for it. It's nice to see some real ones coming out. I think though, the chat assistant to me still does not seem very valuable.
Well, if
you really care about your work, it doesn't seem, cheating on your homework's one thing, but just relying solely on the AI for answering real world problems, like is it that much better than just researching it and typing out yourself?
Yeah, I agree. And here's, I think, an example that I'm thinking about from an investment perspective. Google came out with Google Translate a while ago. It's gotten way better, right? They have the voice stuff that goes along with it. I'm sure, given that they had the Google Translate stuff, they could do something like this, right? Like OpenAI is doing with the voice translation stuff. But Google does not charge anything for Google Translate because I think they understand that while they could do a little subscription service and probably get 1 million, 2, 3 million people to sign up, maybe even more, it's not what it's about. It's about driving people to their platform so they can sell ads and lock people in with these free services.
Yeah, I think that's enough AI talk for the day. Let's talk